Welcome back to another video with me, Miss G, and today we're going to be looking at how to calculate cost price, selling price, markup, as well as gross profit. So there are a few formulas that you're going to have to know to be able to do this section of work, and so I'm going to show them to you now. Your selling price, or we also call it your sales, and your cost price, or we also call it your cost of sales, if I can fit it into this tiny block, are worked out using specific formulas. So selling price, or we call it SP, and cost price, we call it CP, is worked out in the following way. Okay, so your cost price, which they've actually given to you all in this activity, is worked out like this. You take your selling price, and then you're going to ask yourself, to try and help you remember the formula, this is what I do. Which one is always going to be bigger? Your selling price is always going to be bigger than your cost price. So cost price is what did it cost you as a business to buy that item. So it cost me R4 to buy this highlighter, and I'm selling it for R10. I'm not going to buy it for 4 and sell it for 2, then I'd make a loss. So my cost price, which is the smaller one, I'm going to put this smaller amount, on the top. So cost price equals to selling price times 100 over 100 plus your MU stands for your markup. So just keep in mind that the selling price formula, however, selling price equals to cost price. If selling price is the bigger number, I'm going to put the bigger number on top over 100. So technically you're just swapping these two and these two around, but it's always difficult to remember which one goes at the top. So if I'm working out the smaller one, the smaller number goes on top. If I'm working out the bigger one goes on top. And then lastly, if you need to work out your markup equals to your selling price minus your cost price over your cost price times 100. So those three formulas are really, really, really important. Then lastly, you'll see your gross profit. Gross profit is pretty much how much money did you make. So if I bought this highlighter for 4 and I sold it for 10, I've made R6 gross profit on that item. So all you have to do is you have to take your selling price minus your cost price to be able to work that out. So if we're here, they're asking you to work out your selling price. So we're going to use the selling price formula. So we're going to take our cost price of 1,000 and we're going to times it by, we're going to use that formula, 100 plus your markup, which is 50%. Please don't put the percentage sign in, because remember, percentage is over 100, so it's going to complicate everything for your calculator. And we're going to put it over 100, and it gives me 5,000. What? Okay. So over here, we're working out our selling price. So we're going to use the selling price formula. Just remember that we're going to take this amount, your cost price, times 100 plus 50, your markup, don't put the percentage sign in, over 100, and it's going to give me 1,500. Now let me check my answer. If I take 1,500 and I minus my cost price, so my selling price minus my cost price, so I minus 1,000, does it give me 500? Yes, it does, so I know it's right. Okay, over here, they've given you the selling price, and they've given you the gross profit, and they've given you the cost price. You need to figure out what is your markup. So we're going to use our markup calculation. So I'm going to take my selling price, which is 120, minus my cost price, which is 86, over 86 times 100, and that is going to give me basically 40%. If I just round it off. Okay, next one is I need to work out my markup percentage as well as work out my gross profit. So gross profit's easy. You take the 100 minus the 75, which gives me 25 Rand. And if I want to work out my markup, I've got to use this formula again. So it's 100 minus 75 over 75 times 100. And the amount is 33,3. So I'm just going to call it 33%, rounding it off. Just read your question paper carefully. Maybe they want it to 1 decimal place or 2 decimal places. If it's to 1 decimal place, it's 33.3. If it's to 2, it's 33.33. Next thing again, I want you to work out the same things. So I'm going to take my selling price of 2362.5 and I'm going to minus what it cost me. And that's going to give me my profit, which is 472 Rand 50. I need to then work out my markup percentage. So this formula again, you have to know the formulas. I'm going to take my selling price 2362.5 minus 1890 over 1890 times 100. You could actually just put it also gross profit over your cost price, but sometimes they don't give you a gross profit and then you've got to work all of that out. So I just always do it like this. And the markup percentage is 25%. Same thing to work out. So 3000 minus 2250 gives me my gross profit of 750. Working out my markup, I'm going to take the 3000 minus 2250 over 2250 times 100, and that's going to give me again 33%. Okay, so here now they're giving you your cost price. This is what it cost you. You made a gross profit of 600. So they want to know, what did you sell it for? So this is what it cost you, and you made this much profit. You have to add these two together to get 3,600. Now we can work out our markup. So we're going to take 3,600, your selling price, minus your cost price, over your cost price times 100, and it's going to give me 20%. Same thing again. This is what it cost me, plus my profit that I made. So that is what I am selling it for. I'm going to take that selling price minus my cost price over my cost price times 100, and it is 50%. Please don't be afraid if your percentages are above 100%. That's totally possible. It means that they've made a really big, they've got a really big markup, so they're making a really big profit on their product. So if you do see that, don't be scared. Okay, so we're going to again take our cost price plus our gross profit, and it's 1545. Again, then I'm going to work out my markup, 1545 minus 1030 over 1030 times 100, and it's 50. Telling you now, use this button. This button is magic. Don't use times or don't use divide buttons and things like that, because then you need to use brackets to group things together. So rather just use the fraction so that your entry into the calculator looks similar to this, and then you won't make any mistakes. Next thing they've given you is your cost price and your markup percentage. So what we can work out first is, let's work out our selling price first. So selling price, because we've got our cost price and markup, is equal to your cost price times 100 plus your markup, which is 50, over 100. So I've sold it for 1335. What is my gross profit? My selling price of 1335 minus 890 gives me 445. Again, I can work out my selling price. So I'm going to take 760 and times it by 100 plus my markup, which is 75 over 100, and that's going to give me 1330. And so I can take my selling price minus my cost price, what it cost me as a business, to work out what profit I made, which is 570. Okay, so just remember, you need to understand what each of them is. Cost price is what did it cost you. So if you're going to do like an entrepreneur's day at school and you're going to sell donuts, so if the donut costs you 5 Rand, that would be your cost price. And if you're selling it for 8 Rand, that would be your selling price. The difference between those two would be the amount of profit you make. So the 8 minus 5 gives you 3 Rand. And then you'd have to work out your markup, you could say. So you said you sold the donut for 8 and it cost you 5 over 5 times 100. So your markup over there is 60%. If, for example, you sold the donut for 12 Rand, 12 and it cost you 5 times 100, then you get a markup of 140%. That is totally acceptable. Okay, you've obviously just got a really, really high markup, so you might be selling something for quite an expensive amount. So over here, you complete the following table, and so we're going to use the formulas again. I've got cost price, and I've got my markup. So let's go and work out our selling price. So you're going to take 591 times by 100 plus, and I'm going to put that in there so I can put this in perfectly. 1 and over 3 over 100. So if I enter it in like that, because essentially my markup is 33 and a third %, and so therefore my selling price is 788. I take my selling price minus my cost price. The selling price minus cost price is going to give me my gross profit of 197. Alright, the next one we're going to work out is a little bit more tricky, because now we don't have our selling price and we don't have our cost price. All we have is our gross profit. Now if we use this formula, markup equals to selling price minus cost price over cost price times 100, we can try and figure out our cost price. So you'll notice that selling price minus cost price is the same thing as your gross profit. So let's write this formula. So you get markup equals to essentially selling price minus cost price, which is the same thing as your gross profit over cost price times 100. We are trying to figure out our cost price that's missing. So because it's being divided here, the markup equals markup times your cost price equals to your gross profit times 100. Okay. Then what I can do is I want to get my cost price alone. So I'm going to take my gross profit times 100 over my markup. So that's another way that I can then calculate. So I'm shifting this formula to be able to calculate what it is that I want. So let me write this in over here. So I can also work out my cost price by taking my gross profit times 100 over my markup. So let's see if that works out. So I'm going to take my cost price, which I don't know, is my gross profit of 800 times 100 over my markup, which is 80. That's going to give me 1,000. So now let's use my 1,000 from the cost price and enter it into this formula over here to work out selling price. So I'm going to take my 1,000, I'm going to times it by 100 plus my markup over 100. I'm trying to work out my selling price, and that is 1,800. So let's see if that's correct. 1,800 minus my cost price. Does it give me my gross profit? Yes, it does. Okay, so next one, we've got our gross profit again, and we've got our markup, so we're going to use this formula. So I'm going to take my 1010 times 100 over, I'm going to use that mixed fraction of 66 and 2/3, and that is going to give me 1515 is my cost price, 1515. So I can use that 1515 cost price to work out my selling price. I'm going to take 1515 times 100 plus my markup of 66 and 2/3 over 100. And that's going to give me 2525. So let's see. If I take 2525 and I minus 1515, it should give me my gross profit, and it does. Awesome. Again, we're going to work it out the same way. I'm going to take my gross profit of 3787.5 and I'm going to times it by 100 and I'm going to put it over 150. That is going to give me 2525 for my cost price. That's what I've worked out. Then I'm going to take my cost price, 2525, and I'm going to times it by 100 plus 150 over 100, and that is going to give me my amount of 6312.50. Now let's see. If I take my selling price minus my cost price, does it equal up to my gross profit? Yes, it does. Okay, so next one, they've given us our selling price and they've given us our markup. We need to work out, let's say with our cost price, we're going to use the cost price formula. The cost price formula is our selling price times 100 over 100 plus our markup, which is 25%. And so what it cost us was 4,488. The difference between these two is going to give us our gross profit. So 5610 minus 4488 gives me 1122. Again, we need to work out our cost price. So I'm going to take my selling price of 7499.25. I'm going to times it by 100 over 100 plus 125. And that is going to give me my cost price, 3333. The difference between these two is going to give me my gross profit. Minus 3333 equals to 4166.25. Again, we need to work out cost price. So we've got our selling price and markup. We're using our cost price formula. And so we're going to take 900 and we're going to times it by 100 over 100 plus our 50% markup. And that's going to give me 600. The difference between those two is going to give me my gross profit, which is 300. Okay, now they've given us our gross profit and our markup. So let's work out our cost price using that formula. And so we're going to take our gross profit of 909 and we're going to times it by 100 and we're going to put it over the 75% markup, like that. That then gives me my cost price of 1212. If I want to work out my selling price, I just have to add 1212 and the 909, and that gives me 2121. Here they give you your cost price and your markup. What we need to work out is our selling price. So we're using the selling price formula. So I'm going to take 6452.5 and I'm going to 6452.5 and times it by, we're working out our selling price, so it's 100 plus 80 over 100. Remember using the formula, and so that gives me 11614.50. The difference between these two is going to give me my gross profit. So 5162. And then lastly, I've got my selling price and my markup. Need to work out my cost price. So I'm going to use the cost price formula at the top over here. And so I'm going to take 116.2 and I'm going to times it by 100. Let me not forget my fraction. 100 over 100 plus 100. That's the markup. And that is going to give me 58 Rand 25. The difference between those two, 16.2 minus 58.25, is going to give me my gross profit. So I know it's a lot of calculations and things like that, but it's important that you at least, if you know these three formulas, you'd be able to make up this one. So cost price equals to selling price times 100 over 100 plus markup. Smaller one first. So the smaller one on top. And then if it's your selling price that we're working out, we're going to take our bigger amount, 100 plus markup, and put that on the top because it's the bigger one that we're trying to work out. So in this instance, we've got our selling price over there. So we're going to put our bigger amount on the top. And then our markup is essentially our selling price minus cost price, so our gross profit, over our cost price times 100. And then if you need to work out your cost price and all you have is your gross profit and markup, you can use this formula over here. So you have to study the formulas. They won't be provided for you in your paper, so just make sure that you do know them. And try and use this trick. CP equals to SP times, smaller one first, smaller one on top, so times 100 over 100 plus markup. And then if you know at least this one, you'll know this one just by swapping these two and swapping these two around. Okay, good luck. And don't forget to bring your calculator to your assessments and to your exams because it is basically impossible to work them out without it. So don't forget this bad boy, and don't forget our darling little fraction button. If you need to use a mixed fraction, you press shift and the fraction button and it'll give you a mixed fraction, and then enter it in. It's very unlikely that you'll make mistakes in that way rather than using the divide button. Good luck and have a great day.